Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Telin Insights Keynote and Panel discussion powered by CC-Webinar.Live, and thank you for joining. We also would like to thank Telin for sponsoring today's session. Now, I would like to introduce Eric to welcome keynote speaker and later on to moderate the panel. For audience, if you have any questions, please do use the chat throughout this session. And now that's all from my side. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Laura, and hi everybody out there, and welcome to the CC Webinar Live here on the 3rd of December. We're going to talk about the wholesale industry in digital age, so wholesale traffic, marketplace trends, as part as business innovation legacy, and it's sponsored by Telin. So. Yeah, again, welcome guys. Again, as always, I cannot do this by myself, and I need the senior experts from around the globe. Actually, I'm very honored to have them here with me. So I'll give them a minute to introduce themselves. So Nicholas, if I can may start with you, please. Good morning, or good afternoon, actually, for you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here. A quick word for myself. My name is Nicholas. I am responsible for the voice and mobility portfolio for Telin. Telin is a full subsidiary of Telkom Indonesia, and I am based in Jakarta here in Indonesia. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Nicholas, and proud to have you here, and thank you for sponsoring this this session. So from Jakarta, the beautiful Indonesia, we all go all the way to Europe now, and I think it's you, Edwin. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, participants. My name is Edwin van Ireland. I'm the CCO of iBasis. Part of Tofan, so completely independent from any telco at this moment. I run the worldwide sales for all the products offered by iBasis. We're talking about voice, mobile, SMS, but also security and other value-added services going forward. We have a team across the globe and currently stuck in Breda. Not traveling, and hopefully enjoying this nice panel session to meet you all, and let's say to exchange more information with each other.
Thank you very much, Edwin. And from Breda in the south of the Netherlands, we go to Hungary, Budapest, if I'm not mistaken. Csaba.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Csaba Füzesi. I'm heading the product management department within Telekom Global Carrier, mainly focusing on the mobile and the voice product portfolio. And I'm based in Budapest, Hungary.
Okay, thank you, Csaba. And let's go all the way over the Atlantic to Virginia, the US. Jamie, it's very early or very late, whatever you want to call it. Good. How are you?
Great. It's something, that's for sure. Very nice to meet all of you in the audience. Jamie Mills, I'm the Vice President of Global Carrier Relations here at Twilio, and couldn't be more excited to be part of the panel, and look forward to the discussion with everybody.
Thank you, Jamie, and gentlemen, exciting to have you all, Nicholas, Edwin, Csaba, and Jamie, and again, very honored to have you all on the panel here with on the CC Webinar Live. So talking about the wholesale industry at the digital age, what we're going to do, gentlemen and ladies, of course, we're going to have a keynote presentation from Nicholas. So Nicholas, you may start sharing your slides already. And we're more than keen to hear all about what you have to say and what you have to share, Nicholas. And afterwards, please don't forget to put your questions in the chat box, and we are more than happy to answer your questions. Afterwards, we're going to have the panel discussion. So enough time to know afterwards exactly how the market works. So Nicholas, over to you, and all the best.
Good. Okay, well, thank you very much. I guess the next 10-15 minutes, I'll just run through a couple of, thoughts that comes through from Telin. So first of all, we'll talk a little bit about the wholesale connectivity business today. And then I'll talk a little bit about where do we see the future will look like in the coming years to come. So how particularly the wholesale industry in the today's digital age, and how Telin sees that how a legacy business can transform itself in the coming futures, in particularly in the marketplace perspective. So I'll explain a bit more of what we do down the road there. So before that, I'll just take a couple of minutes just go through who exactly is Telin. Now, Telin is the international business arm of Telkom Indonesia. Now, Telkom Indonesia is the incumbent. Obviously, we are a mobile operator. It's a big diverse business that we have at Telkom. In Indonesia itself, we are close to 170-ish million subscribers in there. We are fixed broadband providers. As Telin, we do have our global offices around the world. And as you can see from the screen itself, we're well diverse. We're into data centers, we're cable capacity and submarine cables around the world. Okay, so that's pretty much a sums up of who we are today. So moving on, so I wanted to take maybe next couple of minutes here to share with you where we see the wholesale connectivity business today. Now, I kind of break it down into three different sections, from the financial perspective, from the operational perspective, and obviously from business moving forward, kind of legacy business dilemma. Now, I want to just point out that from the financial perspective, over the last 10 years, or maybe a little bit longer than that, one thing consistent that all operators and carriers have been going through is the declining profitability and margins. And this is something that in every time we sat together in be it ITW, PTC, or events, this is something that we all talk about, and it's something that is apparent. And we're all discussing how do we stop that, reverse that, or whatnot. And bad debts and fraudulent traffics are obviously out there. It kind of like prevents or kind of affect the way business is being run by operator and carriers. Now, cash flow is an interesting topic here. Particularly, we're looking at with the declining profitability, how well are your money being used to generate profitability? We're talking about some carriers are looking at low single-digit margin percentage. How much of a payment credit terms are you giving away for that return of business? So these are questions that and a CFO will be asking themselves in this particular business here. Now, from operational perspective, is equally interesting as well. If you look at the word legacy, tells you a lot of things. Some of the network elements that they are already in place could be relatively dated, and what that really means is it causes inefficiencies in the way business is being run. And not only that, the worst is you're not able to protect yourself, let alone monetize the network that you already have. So these are common problems that we see today. Now, as a business, what do we do? Do we continue the business? Do we consolidate them, or do we wrap it up, sell it to another company? Do we outsource the business? So that's something, a decision has to be made somewhere, sometime. Or if they decide to keep the business, do they have the right digital DNA, the right steps to pursue that in the future business? Okay. So next, I just want to touch base a little bit on the tomorrow, how we see the trend are definitely shaping in the coming days and years here. Well, kind of talking cheek here, how do you sell lemon? Basically, we're saying, how do you differentiate a commodity? Now, voice and SMS have pretty much come to a point that, if not already, it is a commodity. Now, there are obviously different ways that one could differentiate commodity by packaging and bundling. There are different ways that different carriers and operators are doing so. But essentially, it's becoming a commodity. So this is where we're seeing as it's moving forward. Now, trust and transparency is a major item I like to stress here. I think over the years, back in the days when we do bilateral business, always between one-to-one party, without a wholesalers and aggregators in between there. So that changes as wholesale business exploded and kind of grow. We believe there is a need to reestablish the trust back in the wholesale industry. Not every carrier wholesale players are created equal. Obviously some are definitely put a lot more effort in making sure what they're offering are as good as gets, while some are probably not. So we believe in putting trust and transparency back into the business is important. Now, the next item here is from competition and collaboration. It's interesting to mention here that connectivity is connectivity. Connectivity is pretty much cost from our perspective. Could there be a possibility where carriers operators could collaborate in this case here rather than compete on connectivity layer, where they compete on a different layer or different aspect? It's an interesting position of how we see things moving forward. That leads to the next point of, what's next? What's in the future? We see that the programmable cloud communications are definitely something that is heating up. It has been already for last 5, 6, 7, 8 years right now probably. I'm glad to have industry colleague here from Jamie from Twilio. We'll listen a little bit more about what he has to share there. But we believe the battlefield have shifted from connectivity to the applications layer, and this is where operators themselves are getting into the space, if not already in the space, and how do they monetize and leverage on what they have in country network and so forth. And definitely the applications layer are hitting up, particularly API layer, how enterprises are moving in this digital space. They're demanding more and more flexibility in the way they do business or communicate. And finally here on the digitalization is, basically was saying that as opposed to a very manual, dated, aging network or systems that you have, this could be an interesting look at how they need to digitalize their operation and business to make it more efficient, to make your operational cost efficiencies down, and giving automation to allowing how you communicate internally as well as externally, keeping abreast so that you do not fall off the chart in this current wholesale business here. So with that, we are launching, in fact, we just launched today, New Traffics. I will talk a little bit about what we do, what is this New Traffics all about. New Traffics is a public digital connectivity exchange. Essentially, it's commodity-based voice, SMS, and virtual numbers. We're serving anyone who has a need or requirement for these three products, basically. So essentially, we're looking at enterprises, operators, carriers, CSPs, OTTs, or anybody out there who wants to trade and buy and sell voice, SMS, and virtual numbers. So, quick high level, what we're trying to solve here is those items that I mentioned earlier. Those are the challenges that we all faced in the past, and also trying to address some of the future concerns that I also highlighted earlier. So what this particular New Traffics marketplace does is it's full transparent, allows the buyer to actually communicate and start trading with each other openly. It's a single unified platform that allows all three products, commodity products, to be traded openly in there. And because it's software interconnects, kind of allow a fast go-to-market, a single contract, single interconnect is all you need to reach out to the world. It's online payments, all on real-time basis, and most importantly, is full transparent, pay-as-you-go. Basic kind of allows the buyer or the seller to know exactly what is being bought or purchased in a real-time basis. So that's kind of pretty much sums up a quick 10 over minutes of introduction. I think I would want to have a nice conversation with our fellow colleagues from the industry on how they see the industry is facing moving forward as well. Thank you, Eric.
Well, thank you, Nicolas, and absolutely very, very exciting. And thank you for sharing your keynote presentation with us. Absolutely appreciate it. Now, question from my side. I mean, new traffics. How long is it? How long is it there? And how does it work in a nutshell for maybe people in the audience who are looking at it and say, well, you know what, it might be interesting for us. How do they get there? Just can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, thank you, Eric. We launched basically, today. We actually went live today. It's a good timing here. We're live today. The sign-up process is very simple. It's all digital. It's all online. There's no paperwork. You download. You fill up a form. You download. You submit. We send you a contract. You digitally sign it, and we approve it. We give you a username and password. And you started loading your rates, or you started buying. As simple as that. That's it. So feel free to go in there, jump in there, check out the website.
Okay, so sort of, let's say, a plug and play, as we used to say.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, and congrats to have it launched today. So, and I wish you all the best of success with it. Now, let me check quickly the chat box if there are any, let's say, questions coming in, moving in. And yes, I do see a question coming in from Furman, actually. And considering the current polarization between US and, let's say, other parts of the countries, how does it look for you? Let's not go, let's say, too much in the geopolitical environment, but how in general, how is the business, let's say, in Asia currently, Nicolas? What do you see?
The business in Asia, in my humble opinion, it continues to be doing well. Particularly in Indonesia, I mean, speak here is simply because of the domestic consumption size of the country, with 260 million population running in here. One of the healthiest economy, I would say, if not Asia, definitely Southeast Asia per se here. So from that perspective, we are continuing to grow, and obviously COVID-19 and, as you say, the current polarization, it does have an effect, but largely we are still in the growth path.
No, because I know you're over the last couple of years, and actually even today, you're heavily also investing in the subsea cable aspect of our business. Any developments over there that you can share with us?
I would skip that for now. I would let perhaps another time my colleague would be discussing that in more details. Okay, that's fine. So let's get the other guys in there. And Nicolas, thank you very much for sharing your keynote presentation with us. So we're talking about the wholesale industry in the digital age. So Nicolas, you mentioned the transparency actually between the wholesale players and how digital transformation contributes actually to innovation in our carrier business models, and we carriers are all busy with it. So as I mentioned before, let's grab Shaba, Edwin, and Jamie on the floor with us as well. So maybe Edwin, I can start with you. I mean, iBase is powered by Tufan, being one of the biggest groups, and especially in wholesale with all the different solutions and services. How do you see the wholesale industry landscape? What are the current trends and innovations you see?
The innovations are, let's say, are tremendous in front of us. If you look at the evolution where we come from a traditional wholesale perspective, and what is in front of us, I think that's quite a challenging path. And the problem is why? Because we are on a split now. Are we going to the left or are we going to the right? We made a lot of money from our traditional wholesale voice environment based upon traditional techniques like TDM. We merged with with the IP technology as well, and we started developing new business on top of that. Currently, what you see is that tapping into the cloud is tremendous. What Nicholas mentioned, the profitability and the margins are declining purely due to the fact that the end consumer is moving away from our traditional telcos and is going directly into the cloud. And to tap into the cloud, that will become the big challenge for, let's say, many of those telcos. Are they going to do it? Are they going to make the step via an API marketplace to a new API interconnection model at wholesale basis? Or are they leaving that untouched and do they stick to the traditional TDM IP environment? I think that's the transformation what we will be facing. And it's good that we have Twilio in the midst of us, because they will see and look at the telcos and see the struggle which they have. However, Twilio still needs us for the global termination part for the services as well, because they are not going to do that by themselves. So there is an interesting play area forming now where people say, okay, I can't deal without, and I leave the expertise for certain technologies and certain features over to my competition or to my partner, and I stick to the core business. For iBasis, for instance, it's a transformation is going on as we speak. And we became big with voice and mobile. In a very short time, Tofan acquired in total already 5 companies, merged them all together on one platform. But now is the main, let's say, challenge is how to develop new businesses, let's say, to offset and to see the transformation and to support the transformation going forward. So we see challenges, but I also see it more as opportunities going forward. I think it's an interesting area where we are. I know Nicholas already for more than 20 years, and we see where we came from and where we are now, and we are still the leaders in the industry, being excited about what is ahead of us. And let's say, and we are even independent. So I would like to hear the view of Deutsche Telekom, for instance, from Xaba, how he sees that and how Deutsche is evolving.
Thank you, Edwin. So Xaba, you know, he's challenging you already. So come on in and give us your view on how the current wholesale industry landscape looks like and what trends and innovations you see, and how do you cope with it? From Edwin's questions, actually.
To be honest with you, I fully agree with Edwin. So the view what we have within Deutsche Telekom is very similar, I would say, completely the same. There are a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to the programmable telecom space. So the traditional voice and mobile volumes are declining. But at the same time, when you can give to software companies and any other players the possibility to give all of these communications via automatic interfaces, obviously that can make a difference, and that can drive a lot of new innovations and use cases. From DT's perspective, obviously we see those trends. We work together with CPaaS, UCaaS, and all other different customer segments. We pretty much enabling them and working together to make sure that they are going to be successful. At the same time, obviously in terms of digital transformation, we also transforming many of the telecom capabilities to make sure that we can fulfill not only the standard, let's say, portal functionalities, which is pretty much a basic requirement from customers today, but also the automatic machine-to-machine API interfaces. And this is, I would say, the most important in areas like the service numbers, which is closely related to how you can monetize these API-based services. So that's one of the focus area on our side.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, I mean, Edwin and Nicholas, they already referred to you that they are so happy that you're amongst us to tell us your story. I mean, Edwin, you just mentioned that that it's good that you're there, but you need us. That's actually what he said. So how do you see the landscape? What is changing? What are the trends, and what innovations do you see from your side of the business?
No, I appreciate the plugs, and if I was in sales, I would know some people to go call on for sure. But you're right. I mean, I think, I think we're all interrelated, and I think the number one trend that has changed everything, unfortunately and fortunately, is COVID. It made some key things accelerate. The digital adoption, where a lot of brands, enterprises, even carriers to a bit, seeing Edwin, congratulations too on your marketplace launch. That is very exciting. I think that changed everything in a lot of ways. And so digital and omni-channel, that's a big word that a lot of people use, I think accelerated greatly. And then the one that I wrote down, you said trust and transparency. I wrote clarity and transparency, just to have a clear view of the finish line. Customers now say, I like digital, but I've got to understand everything from end to end. How does it work? How are my messages being sent and delivered? And what kind of quality should I expect? And cost, all of a sudden now I've got a clear view on what costs are. So it changed that model. And then lastly, and the third point is just, I think, of hyper focused on knowing your customer. From a carrier perspective, being able to interact with your customers even better through an omni-channel type view, or applications from the cloud-based or whatever it might be. And you're right, we obviously are in that business wholeheartedly. Understanding what your customers want and being very personal, timely, and relevant in your communications with your customer base has become, paramount in having more interactions. I mean, the days of carriers focused on ARPU, net adds, and churn reduction, I think it matters even more now than it ever did. And those are the three things between digital clarity and transparency, and knowing your customer becomes super, super important this day and age.
Thank you, Jamie. You mentioned transparency and that everything should be clear. Well, that's also what transparency, the word we heard in Nicholas' presentation. So
yeah.
Nick, is there transparency between the different wholesale players? What do you see, and how can we improve it, make it better? Because we have to.
Well, I guess, in a pure wholesale world as we exist today, transparency is something that I guess we all like to have. I guess we all are longing to have. At some point, kind of lost that. Not because of anything else, simply because of the nature of the business itself, being wholesale. As opposed to, again, as I say, back in the old days when you do a bilateral kind of G2G arrangement, that I send you traffic, you send to me directly. It's all TDM and half circuit. And those days were then, when you don't have the issue of wholesale in between. About as soon as the wholesale industry picks up by itself, that itself kind of fuzzy along the way. And because the nature of the business itself, not because of individually are not pursuing transparency, because itself, and because of the profitability, the business model itself doesn't allow transparency to be loud and open, because of margins to be kept along the way, etc., etc. Now, what we're hoping to achieve moving forward with our marketplace is to sort of going back to the very beginning, where we want the buyer and seller to start knowing each other, start keeping the transparency open, allowing them to communicate, allowing them to send traffic directly from point A to point B.
Are you talking also about trust? Is that why you want to go back to as well?
Well, trust obviously is part of the transparency. If you know exactly who you're talking to, for example, if you are an enterprise and you are buying a route or destination to Brazil or to somewhere, if the particular operators are selling that route, the network owner themselves, you know your chances of believing that particular network owner is going to be there. As opposed to, obviously, with the advent of wholesalers in between, there's always a possibility. Now, let me take that back in for a second here. And I mentioned this in the beginning. Not all carriers are created equal. obviously there are good carriers that are responsible and care about who they sell to, what they sell in the market. And this carrier will continue to be strong and continue to grow and continue to, and obviously, exist and do well. And obviously, if the carrier operators that are known to be lack of the opposite side, they will eventually fall off the cliff, and the market will adjust itself. Hence, the marketplace is leaving it pure to a demand supply in the free market, allowing itself to adjust itself, where a good, responsible operator carrier will see itself being trusted. Operator themselves will soon, hopefully, will come into the play directly and say, I'm here and I can handle your business directly. The responsible operator carriers will come in and adds value on top of what we call, the commodity, the lemon in this case here, hoping that the enterprise carrier will say, I like this carrier because he's adding value to a pure legacy commodity product. Yeah, over to you, Eric.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. Jamie, you also mentioned quite clearly transparency, is it also that because of the huge diversity now, as in let's say in our marketplace, it is quite difficult, and we have the hunger to go back. I wouldn't say to the old days, but as Nicholas said, I mean, a word was a word, and you were going for it, and you were keeping that, and therefore trust and transparency was there. Now, from your perspective, and maybe as well on the messaging side of the world, how do you feel? How do you see that? What can we do better?
Yeah, we've obviously kind of honed in on the word trust, and that's pretty clear that needs to be one. I think like any other consumer, any other consumer that wants to, consume something from an operator or from, the local supermarket or anything else, they've got to just know that they've got, their interest in mind, as a customer in mind. They know what they want. And again, all this stuff varies market by market, is from a transparency perspective. Some markets will have, highly regulated markets will have a very clear view into what has to happen from a pricing perspective, and message flows and all this kind of fun stuff. I won't get into the technical weeds of everything, but I think, but just winning that, the customer has to feel that they have their best interest in mind, whether it be a carrier or a company like ourselves, like Twilio. We've got to have all those pieces in place, and just provide a clear way all the way through the message flow. So, to Nicholas's point, if you're buying messaging, or those routes into South American country, or whatever you are in the world, you got to know that my message is going to flow from A to B with the highest quality, the lowest latency, and just the best experience for our brand as well, because that's, you also have to take in consideration that their brand matters equally, if not more in some cases, of how well that is. And they've got to have that clear line of sight of how everything works. And when you have that, everything's above board, and the experience is great. And then, it blossoms into other opportunities as that, kind of relationship grows, is the way I see it. But again, it varies by market. And by doing those types of basic things, I think that's the way that brands, enterprises, however we want to classify it, feel good and want to consume more from the operator and or whatever other service provider that they want to enter the digital age into.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Edwin, you want to add something to that on let's say on the subtopic of let's say the transparency, and if it's really there, or if not, what needs to be done?
No, it needs to be there. I think with the challenges ahead of us, and the digital transformation already in progress, and we need trustworthy partners going forward. In the time, we all know that, let's say, certain niche markets were developed in the past to try and to get hold of some business. We all know generated traffic. We saw that fraud and bypassing is obvious in the industry. We see that Robocop calling and other topics are massive as we speak. I think that will remain. People will remain creative to find opportunities. However, I think the existing, let's say, leaders should focus upon, let's say, okay, how can we support the demand from the market, let's say, by bringing cloud communications and potentially our, let's say, current business together to accelerate that. I fully agree with Jamie that COVID brought us in a very unique situation where we needed to accelerate and we needed to share with each other knowledge which was never shared before. And I think that was perhaps one of the key items and my lessons learned this year, where I see that old technology and new technology is massively coming together. And who could imagine that we would have virtual online events 1 year ago like this? That was not even debatable because we were completely biased on our nice and beautiful Hawaiian PTC events and our famous Chicago and Atlanta ITW events. And now we're sitting here with, let's say, the entire world listening in, and we simply combine an old and a new technology together. And everybody should realize that somewhere in this process, there are international inbound service numbers available. There is a new technology like Zoom available, and the call flow diagram is completely different from what we used to see in the past. And I think that transparency, sharing information, and having trust in your partners is extremely important. And that there will always be partners or, let's say, markets looking at the edge of the market, fine, leave that up to them. But we are not going to focus upon that.
Mm-hmm. No, clearly, I mean, by the end of the day, the fittest, the honest, and the most transparent and trustworthy carriers in our marketplace will survive. It's simple and it's inevitable. But Edwin, you were talking about the challenges we're facing. So, Jabba, from you and from Deutsche Telekom point of view, how do wholesale carriers overcome, let's say, those challenges? Finding actually the right partner to extend their service coverage and footprint, for instance?
It's a very good question, and as we all concluded in the wholesale industry, partnerships are increasing in the management priorities, and it's getting more and more attention. Looking at the value-added services, obviously that's one of the areas where we anyway work together with different partners. How to find the right partner for the right products, it's not an easy science. You definitely need to dedicate resources, not only in finding these partners, but also managing these partners properly. And you also need to know your customers very well. You need to have a very clear focus on the customer demands to make sure that you are going to work with the right partners together. At the same time, we also have innovations in the blockchain areas that is going to help us to really understand when we are going to offer for customers end-to-end quality of service is just one example which is in my mind. Then how can you guarantee that all partners in the chain can provide the right quality? And that's going to be transparently available for your end customers. So that's also going to help you in building up and maintaining these partnerships, because you will see which partners you can trust.
Okay, thank you. Nick, being a huge company, big company, and more than 170 million subscribers on your network, and trying to manage that. And with your presentation, of course, you tipped on it and you explained to us how the digital transformation within Telin is moving ahead, but still you're facing the challenges as well. So and on the point of how we're going to work together and the partnerships between the carriers within a marketplace, how do you overcome, let's say, the challenges you're facing?
Well, first and foremost, we have to look at ourselves. You know, what are we doing for the past number of years now as a wholesale carrier, and then what is our aspiration going to be in the coming years to come? Give an example. if you're looking at an A2P perspective, for simple example, with the likes of all the A2P market leaders, so to speak, that we have out there, they've been around successfully for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, if not thereabout. And they have been, largely successful with, global coverage and doing extremely well on the other end. So then we look at ourselves here. Do we want to take that path and building ourselves a global connectivity, just like them, just like these A2P aggregators out there, and take ourselves a X number of months a year to achieve that? And then when you do, what's next? So those are the hard questions we ask ourselves from the very beginning. When we look at it, we say, well, maybe that's not what we want to do. We look at the entire landscape of the wholesale connectivity business, as I shared earlier. We want to play a slightly different role. Now, be it right or wrong is something that we need to, obviously, time will tell us, obviously, but we believe that the path that we took would be, in our opinion, the right way to go, and it does solve the issues that we ourselves internally foresee, and also the industry is actually experiencing. Hence, we believe in a more of a collaboration model, and sharing of the connectivity as a cost, and bringing together way faster in going to market, and bridging the end source to the end operator. I believe that future is, at least in my opinion, bright. In the aspect that we're still a potential to grow in that area. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. I mean, we're all discussing about digital transformation, and it's all over us, as we know. So, do you see any, let's say, innovation in the business models we working with, and if so, do you have an example for it?
Well, one of the clear examples is already presented by Nicholas, of course. I think if you look at the interconnect model on the wholesale side, we will develop from TDM to IP to SIP trunking, and now we already are talking about API interconnection models going forward. That's a complete new, let's say, phenomenon going forward. And let's say the telcos are trying to develop that via API marketplaces, making that easier to connect to wholesale or enterprise markets. And that is a big step going forward. And that is where, let's say, the mindset and the thinking of the traditional telcos need to change. Old and new world coming together. Let's say, if you see what we were struggling last year, how to tap into cloud communications. Being a traditional TDM and IP voice provider going forward. But then you see on the left-hand side that much traffic is going into the cloud, and you need to tap in on that. And we were really struggling how to do that. And in the end, let's say our success was to find use cases where we could link the old and the new world together and tap into a complete new market segment, which was in fact a non-carrier market segment. But they were able to, let's say, translate new technologies like Microsoft Teams and direct calling and bring that into the market. And that was an interesting development. And let's say that went so rapidly, you can hardly imagine that. And currently, we're talking about seats. Let's say 1 year ago, every traditional telco didn't talk about seats. They were talking about CDRs. They were talking about data volumes. And now we're talking about seats developments going forward. So see how things can change. And apparently the pandemic really encouraged us to think different, to think out of the box, and to support the digital transformation. And the market was demanding it. And we all know what happened at the end of March, that everything was exploding. All the VPNs were collapsing because let's say the significant increase in video calling started. And before that, there was a significant spike in voice traffic, and then it dropped massively. And then everybody had to look at, okay, what the hell are we going to do? And I think that is what is going on. That new development is so fastly now embraced and brought to the market. You can make mistakes and you can do the trial and error, but I think that in the end, the parties who are willing to support that change will become successful and they will survive.
But you also need to be able to do this and to be with your company ready to jump into, let's say, if there is a change, you need to be ready to jump in there. So it also goes back to, let's say, a vision and a mission and strategy actually, and of course then you worked out business model, which you already have, that if something like this occurs and nobody saw this coming, but then at least you're agile enough and you're flexible enough and even sometimes efficient enough to go that path.
Dare to dive, dare to take into that decision. And of course, you need CAPEX. You need to have the opportunity. You need to have entrepreneurial people. You need to have different thinkers, not the traditional thinkers, but sometimes...
out of the box, as you mentioned.
A team of millennials, I would welcome them in the company to completely think different, out of the box, to support that transformation. And that is where, let's say, the transparency is there, but also the sharing of information with parties like Twilio, Nexmo, and the message birds of this world. They are ahead of us already. And we thought that we would stay ahead of them. That's not the case anymore. Forget that part.
This is also a wake-up call for us, because we thought we knew, we thought we had the strategy in place, and Nicholas was mentioning this already, and like you're saying as well, and the rest on this panel as well. Guys, watch it. We were bypassed by the youngsters and maybe even the hipsters, whatever. So thank you, Edwin, for your contribution. Jamie, I mean, again, pick up or pick it up actually. What can you say about how this digital transformation actually moved or pushed us actually, to be innovative on especially on our business models? Do you have an example?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with what Edwin said and everybody else in the panel so far. I think COVID forced everything here, and so that could be good, bad, or indifferent, and getting access from others and helping the carriers innovate faster, was paramount. It's obvious, and so I think about Edwin, you were saying the transformation from TDM to IP and SIP and all that kind of stuff. I mean, who would have thought we needed an API access marketplace before Nicholas, you were probably thinking, yeah, okay, this would be a great thing to have. And now all of a sudden it's like, boom, here it is. And consumers want to consume what they want and how they want it. So something like you've come up with is very interesting, because you could have a choice. It's kind of I can go to the mall and do everything I want to do and get what I want to do, or I can go to 15 different stores. Now it's just kind of forced that. So, I think that's a key piece, and that all falls back to this omni-channel kind of thought. I want to be able to consume what I want to consume, where I want to consume it, how I want to consume it, and know that there's clarity all the way through. So not to replicate what everybody else said, but I think I wholeheartedly agree, obviously, with where it's going and how we overcome some of these challenges, for sure.
Okay, thank you. So let's move ahead. I mean, technology is important as well. I mean, it's a tool we need, and Shaba, maybe you can start with it. I mean, about the influence of the new technologies, and how do they support us, and or can new technologies actually reshape the wholesale business? I mean, we already talking about APIs and things, but what do you see, and how did it go in the Deutsche Telekom Group?
Yeah, we were talking about the APIs already. Another technology innovation what I would bring to the panel is blockchain. We are using that in wholesale in more and more use cases, obviously testing them, bringing to the market, evaluating the feasibility. 3 clear examples that they seems to be already relatively successful, I would say, is the automation and the settlement. Basic blockchain can bring transparency and also trust into the transactions between operators. And at the same time, it can also optimize the different business processes, dispute processes, and also how you handle settlements between different telecom operators. We already did practically proof of concepts in the voice settlements and also in the roaming settlement space for that one. And it's also getting traction into the end-to-end quality of service related topics where we can guarantee the end users what they really need, which is the end-to-end quality. So this is a very visible technology shift, and practically it's not a new technology. This is with us since many years. It's just new in the wholesale space.
Okay, thank you. Edwin, coming back to you again. I mean, you mentioned it already, the strength and the influence of the new technologies. But what, for instance, do you foresee what is coming? Let's say a technology which we can use, or you will use actually.
I think that the market is moving, so we should move as well. For instance, IoT, machine to machine, I think it's still in a fast development, and you still see that, let's say, the permanent data roaming is not supported by all the carriers. It's a big blocking issue for, let's say, the development of IoT. If you look at 5G, everybody's talking already about 5G, especially in areas where they think it can survive. However, we hardly have finished our 4G profitability and benefited from that. I'm looking more at, let's say, the technology shift will remain. Let's say the problem is, will it all remain profitable going forward? And can we make the changes that I can support a 5G sandbox and make it interactable with 4G, 3G, upwards, downwards, etc., etc., because that is where we need to invest. We're also looking more at the elements of security. If we see that the complexity has significantly increased and there is one DDoS attack and we can, let's say, make an MNO vulnerable, people underestimate what's going on over there. And I think in our domain, with this increased technology expansion, it's inevitable that analytics becomes extremely important, in-depth analytics, in combination with security protection elements and anti-fraud solutions as such. And that is something we would not put on our portfolio 5 or 10 years ago, because we thought that we were safe. At the same time, so let's say the complexity will significantly increase. And with the complexity, let's say your way of thinking and your focus will become extremely important. Where are we good at and where should we put our money upon, and where should we focus upon going forward? And it's clear that the current carriers can't do everything all by themselves. They need specialists, they need partners, and again, they need the transparency and the going forward.
So actually, coming back, let's say, to the statement in Nicholas' presentation, but that focus is a very important one, and to do what you're good at, and to see who can help you in what, wherever you need support. So, Nicholas, you want to add something on the influence of the new technologies which are around us, and we heard already a lot of buzzwords coming over the table, but how do they or how can they actually support our business models? So can you add something to it?
Yeah, I think what I shared on the the battlefield being shifted to the application layer, I think that will continue. That is pretty much a irreversible trend. I think the trend is taken on a straight path out there, and as you go on that path, there are a lot of auxiliary industries that picks up along with it. For example, what Edwin was sharing, an API marketplace. I mean, that is obviously a very powerful play in supporting all the applications company who has something to offer in the cloud communication aspect. And to us, technology will continue to evolve. As a marketplace sort of operator, we are agnostic in many ways. We will adapt and adopt any technologies that help us to grow our business model and going forward. So to the point of integrating ourselves with third-party partners, such as the API marketplace, such as any CPaaS companies and the applications out there, making it a truly independent, neutral connectivity, exchange, so that the applications company can continue to compete on that layer for the enterprise customers, whereas we provide kind of a shared collaboration model on the connectivity aspects. Now, of course, Kasaba mentioned, think about the blockchain, and there's a very interesting aspect of it, allow the transparency. We're looking at that to some degree, and how do we adapt that as well moving forward, to make sure that the settlement aspect is all done from the blockchain perspective. So, and Edwin mentioned about IoT roaming as well. There's another aspect of, to us is a connectivity layer that could be something down the road. It would be interesting to look at how the marketplace evolve on data roaming and data connectivities. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. So, and I see the clock ticking, gentlemen. So we are roughly coming to the end of it, and for sure we could talk for another hour or two, but I'm still very curious about what's coming, or what we think, or actually what you are thinking, and maybe you can share this with everybody out there was watching and listening to us. What will be there in the future? So, Jamie, kick it off, if I may ask you, what's next? What's out there? Unleash the future to us. Come on.
All right, my crystal ball's warmed up and ready to go. So, it's funny, as much as we might want to like it, I think the changes forced by COVID are permanent in so many different ways. And it's clearly businesses and organizations have figured out how they can indeed adapt now and be successful. So what comes next, right? And so to be successful in a mobile virtual environment, it needs to continue digital acceleration, and then other segments of business that might have really wrestled with this, like education, nonprofit, and governments, need to double down and focus on how they can get into this world, right? So if we can bridge those worlds with the carrier community, as we all need to reinvent our relevancy in the world, in this mobile-centric age, where you've got to be agile, insightful, and fill the marketplace with savings and value, and that trust and transparency. That's where I see it going as you embrace new technologies that come in. So that's my view of the world.
Okay, but maybe there's also let's say a point that we also need to educate people, or helping them to educate, especially the schools, the governments, and so on, because we saw in COVID what happened. We're trying to catch up, especially schools and government, but we still see that there are a huge amount of bugs, there are a huge amount of delays, and even though the 50% of the schools are still not, especially let's say in some countries in Europe, are still not there. So if I may add, education will be one of our key elements to what we actually should do as well, and help them. Jabba, how do you see the period ahead? What do you see in the future?
Yeah, I agree with Jamie. Definitely COVID has a major transformational impact, and we touched that already on this panel as well. We also see the opportunities, not only the threats coming from COVID-19. At the same time, it's also important that when we are talking about technology shifts, those are going to happen. Also, these are happening in the mobile world, just looking at the different technology steps, what we have seen so far, and obviously new ones will come. From wholesale carrier perspective, we have to make sure that we are going to support these technologies as early as possible, but at the same time, we balance between the long-term revenue impact of these technologies versus where you can monetize short-term.
Okay, thank you, Jabba. Edwin, some famous last words.
Now, I think consolidation is inevitable. I think what I just explained, the carriers cannot focus on everything, so consolidation will happen, and old and new technologies will merge together, because the new technique cannot be successful without using the old technique at the same time. and how that will evolve, how let's say the market will be more focusing on what's new, how can we at the same time remain profitable, how can we at the same time deliver the quality and the excellent quality of service in our networks, etc., etc. That is extremely important. If there will be failures throughout this call, this entire panel would be worthless. And that's also linking to your education or the health or the government. It is inevitable that the weakest part in the chain will destroy the success going forward. And that is what we need to identify. And that is where we need to focus upon. And in the rest, customer first. I think the customer is demanding where we should put our money upon and where we should put our development upon.
Okay, and maybe adding our target time to market should be go up, even and how difficult it is, and we all know. Thank you, Edwin. So, Nicholas, tell us. I mean, last but not least, but you have the final word in this beautiful and educational panel. So, what do you see coming?
Well, in a simplistic world, we see consolidation in this wholesale industry will continue. I guess over the last week, we've seen some major announcement in the SMS CPaaS space as well out there, and this will continue. I don't think this will ever slow down in the coming months and years. On the voice aspect, similar trends are going out there. Big operators are sharing interconnects like anything else, simply because it costs too much to maintain them, and that will continue. And smaller operators may decide to, to bundle up and sell their business, and that is happening already, and it's all real, and this will continue. For those who remain in the business, they will be continue to look at utilization, how to protect themselves, how to enable themselves for the future, and that will open up a new opportunity to companies like ourselves and to other companies who are offering support on digital world out there. And as mentioned, also the enterprise, the customers are demanding what they want to use. It's no longer the other way around, or us telling them what they should use. With the cloud communication emergence out there, people said, I prefer to use this channel over that channel, and omni-channel strategy becomes a must. It's not an option, like it or not. And most of the time is, you need to have multiple ways to communicate to a single person, and that is something that 5-10 years before, as Edwin said, it doesn't exist. Who would have thought this would happen? And this again trend is driving all operators and carriers, forcing ourselves into a space that we have to grow up. And as you put it this way, we are not ahead, we are catching up. And with Godspeed, I think everyone here is, or at least those listening to us today, is will sort of like a wake-up call to us and say, what do we need to do moving forward? I think this is an important message to everyone listening. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Nick. And with these wise words, ladies and gentlemen out there, we are coming to the end of this Telin Insight. We were discussing the wholesale industry in the digital age. And I would like to thank very dearly Jabba from Budapest, Jamie from Virginia, Edwin, as always, from the Netherlands, and Nicholas. Thank you very much for this, for being here on the panel and sharing with us your wise and very senior executive thoughts with us around here. So thank you so much. Thanks, Telin, for fantastic sponsorship, and with these words, I would say stay safe. Ciao for now. Stay tuned, because we will have more interviews, more webinar lives coming up from the carrier community. And over to you, Laura, back to the studio. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Dear all, we are at the end of this Telin Insights webinar session, and I would like to thank Nicholas for his interesting presentation, other panelists for sharing their knowledge, and also I would like to thank our audience for joining and listening. This panel will be soon available to watch on our CC Media portal. We are looking forward to welcoming you in our next webinar session planned for the 9th of December. For more information, please visit our event portal. Also, if you're interested in supporting and sponsoring one of our future branded webinars, contact CC team. For more updates and fresh content, follow us on our 5 social media channels. Goodbye for now. Thank you.